It is exactly 9 o'clock in the studios of Classic 105.5 and 105.9. We say good morning to you and welcome back to our listeners, our viewers that is, on GBN's television, Channel 7, Channel 11, Channel 20. For those of you that is in cable, special hello to you that's chiming in via our social media platforms. That's Facebook and YouTube. And those of you on the World Wide Web at www.gbn.gd. Welcome to another episode of To The Point for today, the 20th day of the month of October. This morning, as advertised, my guest, no stranger to the GBN, no stranger to any one of us, is the Education Minister, the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, as we discussed this morning all things education. But by the way of information, Minister Pierre would be the first half of the segment will be dedicated specifically to her, and I would then relinquish her of her responsibilities at 9:30. Thereafter, her PS, Mr. Andall, will take over to discuss other matters touching and concerning what's happening within the education sector. Minister Pierre, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning to you, and good morning to all of your viewers and your listeners. Blessings to everybody.
The journey continues. We literally, I think we can safely say, after the long anticipated wait, we finally seen the light at the end of the tunnel. Yesterday in post-cabinet, the announcement coming of the phased re-entry into formal active classroom. A lot is happening, but I know you can make it easy for us. I'm assuming that it was not an easy process getting where we are, but the decision had to be made.
I like the way that you put it. It was definitely not an easy process. As a matter of fact, I did consultation up till Sunday evening. And during the consultation, I said several times that this is not an easy decision to make. And I'm quite sure those who have been part of the consultation would understand. So when you talk about extremes, those extremes were very wide on some occasions. So you have some people who said school should open on Monday, talking about Monday gone. And there are some people who literally feel that school should open September next year. Look how wide the extreme there is. I remember a case with P.T. Matnick, and this one was really interesting for me, where one person said P.T. Matnick should not be treated the same way as Grenada and Karakou, because our cases are down to zero and we have systems in place where we check people when they come in, and people don't come that often. And the exact opposite was said in another consultation, another group of persons.
Okay.
So definitely it was a very challenging time, but I always relate back to the quotation of a child, I believe from St. Mark's, in the consultation that I had with students on Sunday. He said, Minister, reopening school is a risk, but it's a risk that is worth taking. And that stayed with me. I don't think I can quote anything from the period of consultation as I did with that child.
I'm not sure what level that child is at, but in economics, you refer to it as the opportunity cost, that which must be given up in order to obtain the next best alternative, which is to ensure that our nation's children, they get back to learning. I know we have to dissect the details around it, but I want to make sure that as we get there, I just want you to respond. I speak in conversation with the GET's president earlier this week. He did intimate that while, yes, there was a longing for the reopening of school, there were consultations between the GET and the ministry, and there were a number of concerns that had to be ironed out. Can we assume reasonably that those conversations they took place, and those issues as relates to sanitization, whatever they were, those issues are being ironed out, or how are they being addressed?
Well, as far as I recall, without wanting to go into the details of what was discussed between the union and myself during consultation, as far as I recall, the union was concerned about teachers returning to school for a number of reasons that the ministry doesn't necessarily have control over. So, for example, they don't think that teachers should be taking the bus to go to school. The ministry does not have control over this. They had concerns as it relates to teachers who have children that they need to stay home to take care of because they do not have somebody to supervise those children. And again, that's one that we don't have control over. Right? And what I've been trying to explain to the union is that when government takes a policy position on matters as it relates to COVID-19, it doesn't do so by sector. So the government doesn't say that workers in the Ministry of Agriculture, these are the rules that govern you during this period. And then teachers or nurses, so the government don't say nurses, you can take the bus, teachers, you don't take the bus. Unfortunately, it's not done in that way. So when government makes a decision for public officers, it's across the board generally. And so I understand the concern, the fear that, they're going to contract COVID-19 and all of that. I understand the fear, I understand the concern, but unfortunately, we cannot dissect and to say that certain things apply to certain public officers and not to others. Of course, as it relates to the school setting, we have done the best that we could do as it relates to maintaining a safe environment. So we have provided additional supplies to schools. We've also said to schools, the finance that the ministry provides to schools, we want you in this period to make supplies a big priority. Right? We also contracted over 400 persons that we assigned to schools to assist principals and staff with additional cleaning and sanitizing. So I think generally speaking, the ministry has done its best. I mean, there of course would always be more that we can do, but we have to remember the constraints financially and otherwise.
Well, thanks for the response, Ken. Of course, I wanted us to preface the rest of our conversation and highlighting the fact that the groundwork was done, and it wasn't a case whereby we just want to make sure that it wasn't done ad hocly. So we've gone past that. No,
that being the case, hold on. I just want to make the point. I cannot speak for the union. I don't think that they would be totally satisfied with the condition, right? But I'm just saying we have done all that we could do in the situation. And as you say, the opportunity cost, we've reached a point where we're saying the risk associated with not going to school may be higher than the risk of COVID-19 at this time, and we need to open schools.
I think the reality, and I think we've intimated it from day one, that we're going forward while we have concerns, and as you intimated, those concerns are not limited just to teachers, but I think all Grenadians, at the end of the day, I have my concerns about having to leave home and come to work, but it's a risk I have to take within constraints. But that being said, November 1st is the date, just under 2 weeks. Is going to be the phase re-entry into the classroom. Set the timelines for me and the specifics as it relates to that.
So, as indicated, we have identified two priority categories, right? The category of students who are in the exit grades or exit form. And these are students who are supposed to be leaving that level of education within the year. So students who are now preparing to do CSTEC in May, June, July, whenever it's going to be. We're saying they need to get some measure of priority. I've heard from the students, Miss, it's going to be too much pressure when all of our SBAs pile up. There are some SBAs that we must go into the lab to do. We cannot do it at home. So these students, we have given some measure of priority. The second category, and you've heard me passionately express that concern, students who have not been engaged from since September. We don't know what's happening with some of these students, right? And so we need to get these students to come in to do an analysis, an assessment. What is going on? What is the problem? What is the reason? Because unfortunately, some of these students, they do have devices, they do have connectivity, but they are not on. And so if it means that, as you know, I always say, sometimes we have to do what is best for people, even when they don't understand what's best for them. So that child might not understand it's important to have an education. Mm-hmm. We have an obligation, we have a responsibility to ensure that we support that child, even when they don't understand the importance.
So the return, the November 1st phase, the phase one of it, I'm getting the sense that it's a double prong approach. One, yes, recognizing that there are those, they have to get started. They have to kickstart that process. You can't wait too long, because at some point, they would be left behind and disadvantaged. And at the same time, they're already behind, as you said. And at the same time, understanding that there is a segment, a portion of their fraction, that for some reason, while learning platforms have been made available, they have been disadvantaged one way or the other. So that 2 weeks process would be to assess whether exactly what's happening with them and what's the process. So there is the folks, the children that is going through the exit exams. For children, for some whatever reason or the other, and I know you've said that you've mentioned of this passionately, that a child possibly over the last 5 weeks may have gotten an 80% grade average, but that may not necessarily be a true reflection of what's happening. What specifically would be teachers' responsibility within the next 2 weeks as it relates to the assessment within that, and then what happens going forward?
So within those 2 weeks, the two categories that I referred to will be engaged face-to-face. Those in the exit grades, we have tried to standardize as much as possible, but of course you're going to have the school-specific that may kick in. But Wednesdays to Fridays, these students, we expect all of them to come in, except, as I said, a parent is traumatized or a child is traumatized, or that child has severe underlying conditions. Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, those exit grades. On Mondays, we have specific classes that would go in only if you have not been connected 80% and over or connected at all. And then the Tuesdays, another group of students. These students are therefore getting 1 day per week, the disconnect, if you want to refer to that category. And so we expect that when these students come in, the first order of business is to establish what is the problem. Is there anything at all that we can do as it relates to support? Is there any way we can assist you? How far back are you? Do we need a special program for these students, right? And of course, what is going to happen with regards to the students in the exit grades, the teacher is going to be engaging them in regular classes. But we have devised an approach, and of course a school may come up with an even better approach, where the teacher is going to use their device to teach the students in class and at the same time communicate with those who are at home, right, for whatever reason. And so we believe that at the minimum, that particular approach will work. It can work. And of course, we leave room for more creative ideas that would yield even better results. But I want to make a pin a point here, and that is the academics important. But even more important in my assessment is that we are teaching children not just to pass exams. Remember, we are supposed to be teaching children to live for life. And so the values, very critical. The interaction, the socialization. I've gotten some messages on my phone from students, upper level, TAMCC, for example, and it's frightening, the experiences that they are having, the thoughts that they are having, being home alone most days. And so that opportunity to engage, to socialize is extremely critical. As adults, we may not basically feel the same way. And of course, some adults do. Some people love their privacy. But remember, children, we may not understand what's happening with them. And so we ought not to take for granted that everything is okay. We have had several issues raised as it relates to what is happening in homes when parents are gone, children are home, siblings are home. What is happening there? There are major concerns.
A lot of questions coming in, Minister. So someone is asking the question: what is the intended plan to address teachers that are off to the classroom that's making the journey to school? What happens to students who are at home that is comfortable with the online protocols? What happens to them in that interim?
That continues. As a matter of fact, yesterday we did a test at a particular school. The device in front of the blackboard captures the teacher, it captures the blackboard. And so with the teacher teaching those students in the classroom, can allow or use the Zoom platform or the Teams platform to connect those students who are home. So it is not that the teacher would have to be teaching two different lessons for those home and those in the classroom. They are going to benefit from the discussions in the classroom as well, those who are at home. We expect them to continue to connect as they have been doing.
There is the assessment of the children as they go back into the classroom setting. You would have to appreciate and agree, I would assume, that emotional support would be critical at all levels. I note I'm saying all levels. And I know, we sometimes assume that the adults are okay. You might be, the adults are sometimes, we tend to crack a bit much easier than the children. The children tend to be a little bit more carefree. What sort of support? I'm assuming the GUT was going to do what it can for its membership. I'm assuming that. But as an employer, what sort of support is in place to address the emotional and psychological needs of both children and staff and the students and teachers as they make that bonding?
So during the last period, similar to this, what we did was to empower our counselors to be able to provide services, not just face-to-face, not just online for specific individual, but we also had services that even parents took advantage of because you could have called in. There was a hotline. And so we are still providing services where parents, teachers, and students can access our counselors. We are continuing to reach out to our principals, saying that our counselors are available. Where there is a need, we facilitate that. And we are very much aware of the need at this time, especially to have our students access a counselor where there is a need.
We're keeping our eyes on the clock. It is 17 minutes gone past the hour, just by the way of information, as we go through navigate through the program. Minister Pierre, so of course we're begging your indulgence as we go ahead. We'll be leaving us at the 9:30 mark, and thereafter P.S. Andall is going to join the conversation as we continue. Of course, he will be looking at some of the online portals, platforms that is available for the continuous education process. So, Minister, we're looking at phase one, those who getting ready for those exit exams. Take with me through. Once we've gotten through, they've returned, everybody's on a timetable. What happens going forward? Phase two.
So I want to bring us back, even before we answer that question. What we're doing now, we did it before. The only difference is that the number of cases may be a bit higher than it was, and we probably did not go through a spike as we just been through, right? But I believe that there's a measure of resilience within the sector that we can manage this. I believe so. Now, once we complete phase one, I'm anticipating that we should be ready by then to expand the number of students who will be able to access a face-to-face opportunity. I do believe that we have, as I've consistently said this, the ability to conduct ourselves appropriately, to follow the protocols, and so we will be able to continue seeing the numbers going down. I anticipate that we should be able to go on a wider opening after the 12th of November, which is why I want to encourage all persons, not just teachers and students. Let us continue to follow the protocols, because that has a direct correlation to the extent to which we would be able to reopen school in full. May sound funny, but every person has a role to play. Whether we open school partially or fully, every citizen of Grenada can contribute to that. Wearing of our masks, sanitizing our hands or washing our hands regularly, and of course, maintaining physical distancing as we engage. And I would add number 4, vaccination is going to play a major role because it's going to reduce risk, it's going to increase immunity. And so I want to appeal to us that every person, even if you don't have children in school, you can help. You can help by helping us to reduce the risk of a spread of COVID-19 as we return to school.
I'm happy that you've raised you've brought the issue of vaccination into the conversation, because it sits at the dead center of this. From the GT's position, and while the government has made it quite clear that mandatory vaccination is not on the table, certainly we're looking at the trends across the region, what's happening even within the private sector, and we've seen it across the region as well. And there is a fear that while the government has not taken any fixed position on mandatory vaccination, the trend is that at some point it is going to come to bear. The government may take its position, but the teachers have decided. We're saying vaccination is one of the ways to get this thing under control. The GT has made its position clear that, listen, we're not going in any way, form, or fashion going to accept any mandatory vaccination. Do you, Minister, while yes, this is a breathing space, do you see that position by the GT and maybe what's happening with government? At some point, we're going to go at loggerheads again, and if so, is government thinking ahead as to how best we can avert that potential issue?
Well, because I cannot speak to what is likely to happen in the future, right? I don't think I possess that skill as it relates to whether there will be or won't be mandatory vaccination in the future, right? What I can say is this. The government has been doing everything in its power to manage the situation in Grenada. And if you ask me, without any biasness, I would say the government of Grenada did an excellent job in managing the COVID situation. Doesn't mean that we did not have a spike. Doesn't mean that we did not have deaths in some cases, and unfortunately so. But I think if you put all things together, we have to admit that the government of Grenada has done a good job in managing the situation. The government by itself cannot do this. The government requires every person to be part of the effort, and we've had so many people contributing to the success that Grenada has experienced thus far. When it comes to mandatory vaccination, when it comes to saying that a business and the staff must be vaccinated to offer a service, the government did not just pull this out of a cap. There's been careful analysis of the situation. There's been technical advice given to the government in that regard. And what the government is saying at this point, at this stage, we believe that we can reopen school without mandatory vaccination for 2 reasons. One, we believe that good sense is going to prevail and that people are going to voluntarily do what is necessary to help reduce the spread of this virus. And 2, we believe that with certain systems in place, that we are going to be able, based on where the numbers are at this time, based on where the trends are going, because we also considering those, that we can reopen school without a mandatory enforcement of vaccination. Now, I can't say what's going to happen next week, next month. I can't say. What I can say is, let us behave ourselves well. Let us follow the protocols, and to ensure that the trend that we see, that it continues to be a downward trajectory as it relates to the number of cases, number of deaths, and let us make sure that the opposite happens for vaccination, that we see an upward number in that regards. That's what I can say. I can't say what's going to happen 2 weeks from now, a month from now. What I can say to the union, though, in that regard, any decision that government takes as it relates to vaccination or any other matter as it relates to COVID-19 is always done in the best interest of all concerned. And we expect that whenever those decisions are taken in the interest of all concerned, that all concerned will comply accordingly. But I repeat, as I started, at this point, we do not think that it is necessary to have mandatory vaccination for the reopening of school, but that we trust that all concerned would do everything that they can to protect themselves.
And I understand your position, Minister, but I'm assuming reasonably that government somewhere if not in the back of your minds, in the face of what is vaccine hesitancy, certainly, while we're hoping that good sense is going to prevail, and I think each and every one of us, but that question of hesitancy is not just one that resides within Grenada or within the Caribbean. It seems to be, it's worldwide. Has government in any way, form, or fashion given consideration anyway? What happens? There is a question of getting children vaccinated. What happens if, let's say, we've gone to the next phase one of this process? Has government in any way has put a plan in place, a contingency plan in place as to how do we deal possibly with, one, the continued hesitancy, two, God forbid, a spike? Because we just had this is just our first case of it, our first bout of it. There are those who've gone through the first phase, second phase. St. Lucia is on to his fourth phase of it. What happens if there is a surge? We go to number two. There must certainly be a contingency plan as to how, because God forbid at some point, COVID or no COVID, whatever it is, we have to find a way to continue with the job of educating, advancing the growth of our nation's children and the development of the country. So there must be a contingency plan somewhere, Madam Minister, and I'm hoping that there is.
You have a very creative way of trying to get out what you want to hear. So let me put it this way. Every Monday, government spends the first part of cabinet discussing the COVID-19 situation in Grenada with technical advice and with reports on what is happening locally on the ground. And all of the regulations during that period are reviewed. All of the current protocols are reviewed and conclusions are made, decisions are made based on the new data, the new statistics, the new trends, whatever the situation is. So every Monday morning, there's a possibility that something can change, right? And so as it relates to mandatory vaccination, I would say at this point, and I'm talking about for the reopening of school or for continuation of schooling, I would say that would bear on what happens in terms of the trend that we see. So if government goes that route, it would have to be on the basis of what you just explained. The situation has reached a point where we need to put some greater management systems in place to facilitate, because there are persons who feel that there's nothing wrong with children not having an education, meaning that children who are home, some persons feel that we could do a year of the online. But what happens to those who are not able to cope with the online, right? For some people, that's not a problem. But we as a nation, sometimes we only think about today, but let us think 20 years down the road. I remember being engaged in a regional meeting, and one minister for education was almost in tears when she explained what was happening in that particular country. She said, it hurts my heart to see boys just drop out. They just can't be bothered. So they pull in a bus door, they're doing something down the road. These are children who had a dream of something else, but they cut that dream because they cannot cope with the current format of education. And so we do not want to be in a position where we deny our children that opportunity. Yesterday, I had some material of a Form 3 student. Pregnancy. Now, I am not at all implying that if that child was in school, she was not going to get pregnant. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is all of those social issues, I am sure that we can reduce those by having our children engage. As I said, I can't repeat some of the messages I've been receiving from students, some of them very frightening. And many of these students want that opportunity for that face-to-face engagement. And not just students. I have a message from a teacher. She said, I've been teaching all these years, and it's beginning to affect me psychologically, the number of children in my class that I cannot connect with. I don't know what's happening. They're just not responding. And so we have to balance that thing, the fear of getting COVID versus the risk, the generational catastrophe that is normally referred to by our children not getting an education, not getting engagement. And I'm speaking from a holistic point of view, not just the academics.
I know I did promise that we're going to have to relieve you at 9:30, and I'm going to stick to that commitment. But before we run off dote and we break and invite Pierre Andall, can we assume reasonably, because some of those protocols were already put in place in schools in terms of handling an outbreak at school? Is those protocols are actively engaged? What happens? Teachers, principals, all owners, they are aware. Those systems are in place and on the go as of the first. So at least in case we have to respond to any of these emergencies, those systems are in place.
So we have established protocols for the functioning of school during COVID-19. As a matter of fact, those are documented. And the implementation of those protocols and guidelines is the responsibility of the principal on the ground with support from the Ministry of Education. We feel quite confident that despite it is a challenge for all concerned, we believe that our principals do have the capacity, and they've demonstrated the capacity to manage their plans to the best of their ability during this challenging times. And so all the possible support we can give, we have offered, and we will continue to make those support systems available to principals. But we have documented clear guidelines. How are we supposed to do lunch, for example? Of course, some schools do deviate from that, and we allow them to when we are confident and comfortable that they have developed a unique system that works and works well. So we are quite comfortable with those creative ways that people do what they do.
It's about 28 minutes onto the hour of 10 o'clock. My guest this morning is the Minister of Education, Minister Emmalin Pierre. Emmalin Pierre, Ms. Minister, I did promise you that I'll relieve you. You've begged an indulgence quite early, and I acceded to your request, upon which we'll then engage with your peers. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds just to summarize where we're at, and just give us an appreciation for what happens, what would translate itself within the next couple of weeks.
Right, and I must make sure that my PS is on before I take my exit. Is he on as yet?
I haven't seen him, no.
Okay, so let me begin to wrap up by saying that we are about to resume face-to-face classes. We have done a thorough assessment, and this is why I took the time yesterday to not do the regular, but to do a thorough presentation as it relates to how do we pull all that we've heard together? What do we conclude? What do we do now that we've heard from everybody? And of course, with consultations, everyone has an opportunity to share their views. Does not mean that the final decision would be your opinion, right? And we all understand how consultations work. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to the process. During the consultation, we got some rich feedback from all of our stakeholders. At the end of the day, as you said, difficult decision. I wish I could have done what everybody said I should do. I wish that was possible, make everybody happy. The unfortunate thing is that when the rubber hits the road, you have to now make a final decision. I am satisfied that we have taken into consideration all the feedback that we got. Unfortunately, we can only make one final decision. And we made that decision in the interest of all concerned. We took everybody's interest into consideration. And so I want to appeal to everyone concerned to work with us. to support the government of Grenada, the Ministry of Education, as we attempt to roll this out. The same fear existed in September last year. The same fear, the same concern. This would not work. We're going to have a spike again. Children are going to die. We heard all of that September last year. Let's believe in ourselves. Let us believe in the system. Let us support the system to ensure that it works. I believe it can work, and I encourage everyone to support. The bus drivers, you're going to ensure that you do all that is necessary to protect our teachers and our students as they ride on the buses. The students, when you walk the street, when you're in the classroom, you're going to do all that you can do to protect yourself. Likewise, our teachers and our principals. If everyone would do what they can do or what they need to do, I believe we'll be fine. We cannot further delay the face-to-face engagement of our students at this time. I believe we are doing the right thing, and I believe with the support of everyone, this is going to work. God is good, and I trust that He's going to continue to be faithful to us in that regard.
It is now or never. 25 minutes on to the upswing of 10 o'clock. And Minister Pierre, I have not seen your replacement, P.S. Andall, so it means therefore I'll take a break, though.
I'm going to stay on until he comes on. It's possible, because where he is, he's not at the office. And it is quite possible that he might be having internet challenges. Worst case scenario, I will continue.
That's a conversation, and I'm happy that you maybe, God has a way of working things out. Because that's a conversation we have to address. The connectivity challenges and how government is playing its part in assisting parents in dealing with that. We take a quick commercial break, Grenada. This is To The Point for today, the 20th day of the month of October. We'll be right back.
Let's get tough on breed larceny. It will destroy our economy. Larceny threatens our food security. Can hurt us locally, hurt us globally. To all the buyers, ask for license from all produce sellers. To all people, 300 for police for them thieving fellas. To all the farmers, please don't steal produce from your brother. Then you're selling to traffickers, hotels and street vendors. Nah, man. Let's do all we can to stop radio larceny. New vigilance, new laws, and a tough judiciary. Stop Grenada's organized business crime. It's time.
To report pre-deal larceny, call 300.
This is a message from the Ministry of Health. If you or a family member suspect that you may have contracted COVID-19 and are displaying symptoms, please immediately self-isolate at home. This means that you must also avoid all contact with other members of your household. Do not visit hospitals or health centers, as this creates the potential for further spread of the virus, and it puts additional persons at risk when you come into contact with them. Your best course of action is to call the COVID-19 hotline at 458-4787 or 538-4787, or contact your nearest health center or medical station. Once your information has been received, health officials will come to you. Help prevent the spread of COVID-19. This has been a message from the Ministry of Health.
GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11. K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere.
can't wait to see my granddaughter.
20 minutes on to the hour of 10 o'clock. Welcome back to The Point for today, the 20th day of the month of October. We did indicate to you at the start of the program that Minister Pierre would be relieved of her responsibilities here onto The Point, and thereafter PS Kevin Andall would assume the position of conducting the rest of the program. So again, in case you're wondering, Minister Pierre has taken her departure, and I want to say good morning and welcome to PS Kevin Andall. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, Joseph, and it's so good to be here. I had a little bit of connectivity issues, but it has all been resolved, and I really want to follow up where the minister left off, really to look at our engagement with our stakeholders.
Right.
And in regards to engagement of our parents in understanding this whole complex situation of remote learning. So that is my part here this morning, to really give an update to the nation and to spend some time with you, Joseph. It's always good to speak to you.
It's always a pleasure speaking to you, well, Mr. Andall. I noticed on different platforms in the last couple of weeks that the ministry has been, even before a decision was taken as to the phased reopening of school, government and its partnership with its other stakeholders, you've been out there informing, getting parents, teachers, students up to breast on a number of different platforms, educational platforms. And yes, certainly it's important, and I know you would agree, that each and every one appreciates the virtue and value of what's happening here outside of the Ministry of Education, but then that is our collective responsibility. So tell me, what's the latest? Where are we as we chart the course forward for online learning, which really and truly it is here to stay, no more than ever. There is no turning back the hands of time.
Indeed. I can tell you blended learning is the way forward. COVID-19 has accelerated that, but it also shows that we have to be prepared for any eventuality. And face-to-face interaction or face-to-face instruction has its challenges in times of emergency, in times of crisis. And as a ministry, we are embarking on, one, getting parents to understand this whole complex situation of remote learning or blended learning. As a parent, I can tell you that I have my part to play, because I have to stay home sometimes, maybe get a little half day, so I can engage my children in remote learning, because they have the Zoom and all different platforms they have to be engaging. And when you come home in the afternoons, you still have to do that. So it's important for us as parents to know how to handle. So for the Sundays in October and November, we are going to engage. We have been engaging and going to engage our parents in understanding the complex nature of remote learning. It is important for us to do that. So this is how we are going to do it. First and foremost, we have a webinar for parents. And Joseph, if you notice that I'm home, and I have a little one close to me that definitely don't want me to continue as I ought to. I would ask you to just give me 1 minute so I can deal with that. It's a it shows the complexity of what we deal with as parents right now.
So
just
as well we'll
1 minute for me
as well we'll do
to deal with that.
So Pierre, I'm gonna give you a minute. I'll take a quick commercial break, and I'll be here waiting for you. We'll take a quick commercial break, Grenada, and we'll be right back. And it's still the point for today, the 29th day, the 20th day of the month of October. Certainly as it is, the challenges, folks. And I'm seeing a lot of questions while we're at it. There's a lot of questions that is coming via the social media platforms, and the reality is that we are all in varied positions when it comes to how do we move from point A to point B. The reality is that the education process must continue, and I think what we have to do is to, while we may not be able to agree collectively at the same time on the same issue, I think we cannot deny the fact that the education of our children, it takes paramount importance over every and anything else that happens in our lives. And the worst thing, you worrying about your children if 2 days, when they go home on summer break for 2 months and they didn't pick up a book, they come back to school and they seem lost. Imagine what happens if a child loses a year in the life of his education. The impact it has, not just on him, the impact on his livelihood, your livelihood as a parent, because now you know how to start rethinking. I think P.S. Andall is back. Thank you. Welcome back, P.S. Andall. Before you took that break, we were talking about ministry offering support to parents as part of this blended learning. What is it exactly, is the role that the ministry, part of the ministry is playing?
Right, so as it was said before, that we're having every Sunday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. a webinar series for parents. The first episode focused on my child's device. So we got parents to understand the devices that their children have in their possession that was provided by the government of Grenada. We have provided for secondary school students as well as primary school students. And what we did is that to get the parents to understand the device, the functionalities of the device, but most importantly, the care of the device and what it is that the children ought to do in regards to the device. That was very good. We had it on GIS and GIS Facebook platform, as well as other media entities that support the GIS programming. We also had it on Zoom, available to the general public, maximum 300 registrants. We had a good turnout the first episode. The next episode was last Sunday, whereby we focused on the apps on the device, the secondary school device. This Sunday, we are going to focus on the primary school devices and the apps, the important apps on those devices. The next Sunday, we are going to look at how do I balance myself during this COVID-19 with my children, the psychosocial aspect. And the next Sunday, we are going to look at the psychosocial aspect again, but how do I balance remote learning with my busy schedule and my children? After that, we are going to come up with some new topics that are pertinent to parents. We have been consulting with parents to find out what topics they would like for us to explore. And right up to the end of November, we are going to provide that kind of support every Sunday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., getting parents to understand this whole aspect of remote learning. And as a parent, and the challenges associated with parenting in this difficult time, it is important as a ministry that we provide that kind of support to our parents. Not only that, Joseph, we are going to start a webinar series for students also, so that they understand the devices that they have in their hands, and that they should teach them how they can use it effectively. We have had students saying, oh, I am typing in certain things in YouTube, and I can't get it on the government's tablet. And I will say to you, Joseph, we have something called a DNS filter. So if you decide to type in some offsite, you just wouldn't get through.
So I'm assuming, PS, that the devices that they are, but somewhere are specifically to be used as an educational tool, a support educational tool.
Yes, definitely. And some parents and as well as students really doesn't understand that and believe it's a device that can be used for educational as well as entertainment. The intended purpose of the device is to provide support for education. So if you decided that you want to type in some offsite that is harmful and is not age appropriate, the DNS filter that we have on the device would prevent that from happening. But then you would have parents calling to say that YouTube has been blocked on the device, not understanding the technicalities involving this and what is actually happening. So that kind of support is important for parents as well as the students so that they understand what they have in their hands and the tools available to them.
What are some of the greater challenges? I mean, I'm assuming we've been a year plus into this. We've had the program. We continue to tweak it. I'm assuming that as a ministry, you've been able to assess, reassess as a means and reevaluate as a means of ensuring that you be able to capture what are some of the real issues that parents are having, so that you can address them within a timely manner.
I can tell you this program is one of the most ambitious in the OECs. As a matter of fact, we have provided to the students of this nation over 22,000 plus devices. It is a project that is unprecedented in a state like ours, and our project team has been working tirelessly, gathering lessons learned, tweaking. We have to tweak on the go. COVID-19 did not give us the opportunity to have it all laid out perfectly. What it did is that it said that you have to paint the bus while the bus is moving. And we have been doing that. One of the challenges that we saw is really getting the end user, the students, to care for the device.
Okay.
Caring for the device. And that is why we're having these programs to really highlight some of those issues. Caring for the device, understanding that these devices are expensive. These devices are intended for a certain purpose, and that the care and security of the device is in the hands of the end user. That is one of the major challenges. A next challenge that we had was really adoption. Getting the teachers as well as the students to use the device within the whole instructional sphere. It is not the major one, but one of the challenges that we had. That is why these educational programs and awareness programs, because we're not only targeting parents and students, but we have been targeting teachers, not only to understand the functionality of the devices, but understand how we can use the device for pedagogical purposes. How can I use the device to improve my delivery? How can I use the device to ensure that my children capture the interest of my students? I can say that we have had teachers who have been doing very well, that the children would do the morning assemblies. They pray. Then you have teachers that use the YouTube videos with lyrics to get the children to sing the songs and to understand the songs. But not only that, emphasizing reading in the process as they do that. We have had teachers using Microsoft Teams and Zoom in many creative and innovative ways. So adoption is a major thing, getting teachers to use the devices and students also to use the ebooks on the devices. And the third challenge in some areas was connectivity, getting connectivity at the community level. And that is why the government's program to provide subsidized internet services for vulnerable families is so important, that the families who are not able to access internet, broadband internet at their communities and at their homes can have the opportunity to do so. So these are the three major challenges that we have faced, that we were faced with during the process.
Let me just tag back to the issue of connectivity. And I know, yes, the government has made efforts to ensure that increasingly more children have access to broadband. But one of the challenges that you find now is the issue of bandwidth. The available bandwidth available at basic households and the cost that goes with it. So yes, while government is doing X, Y, and Z, but there are those that will say to you, listen, I have 4 kids at home. Outside of the plans that government would have had with those specific group of children, is there a conversation that's ongoing as it relates to increasing bandwidth if possible? I'm at home. I've got one little boy at home. He's working. There's always the issue of fluctuations. And that is not just an issue even at home. I think the fact that even in where we are now, having to use technology, a few people log in, so the issue of the fluctuation has become a concern. Has government, maybe if not by through the advice of the Ministry of Education, you've had conversations with stakeholders that says, listen, what can we do? So instead that a basic package comes with this amount of bandwidth, maybe based on the needs of our nation's children and the parents as well, that we now need to maybe have a basic package go up to maybe instead of 50 megabytes, possibly 100? Is that a conversation on the table?
It is a concern for us in regards to bandwidth, because we have teachers saying that my 4 children home are using the internet, but I have to teach. And when you're broadcasting, when you're streaming, you need extra bandwidth.
Extra data, yes.
So it is a concern that we have raised, and I am confident that the relevant personnel will bring it to the NTRC, and government would have a discussion with the NTRC and the service providers regarding this, because we cannot as a nation say that we are embracing e-learning, we are embracing e-commerce, and we are not looking at dealing with the issues of bandwidth. And not only download speed some people look at, but also upload speed. Mm-hmm. Upload speed is very, very important. We might see an increase in download speed, but then when you're a teacher and you're teaching, your upload speed is very important. And if there's a bottleneck with upload versus download speed, then we'll continue to have that problem. So there should be a national conversation, and I'm confident, I believe that the conversation has started. And it's something that we need to be addressing not in the distant future, but very soon, because it would definitely affect how we deliver education, but how we deliver services in our nation. So it's quite important that we address that. It's an important point that you made, and it's an important point that we have no issue that we have noticed. And we believe that it should be addressed, and government will address that. Ministry of Education will ensure that we push our side of it, and the other stakeholders can do the same as we ask for greater bandwidth and improve infrastructure.
We have about 5 minutes or so left, P.S. Andall, and I want us to discuss the arrangement, the existing arrangement between the ministry and parents / students as it relates specifically to the devices. How is that arrangement made known to the parent? Is it a verbal arrangement or is it written that, listen, this is what is happening, we provided you the details, we provided you the device, this is your responsibility, failure to maintain such, Are there penalties? If so, what are those penalties? And wanted to ask, were those issues, were they communicated in writing to parents?
Every parent who access the device, their child's device, have to sign a contract. Now, at the distribution site, these contracts are explained to the parents. Now, all the fine prints, all the different responsibilities are outlined in that contract. Parents read the contract, they sign on to the contract. But we have gone further, that in the first episode of the Parents series, we dealt with the contractual obligation of parents, outlining that the device is a property of the government of Grenada, which is on loan to parents for educational purposes, that anybody traveling abroad, that they should not travel with the device, but the device should be returned to the Ministry of Education, that no device, no hardware, no software, no application should be tampered with on the device. If there is damage or loss to the device, there are procedures outlined that should be followed. All of this is outlined in the contract and also was dealt with the first episode. What we are doing now is that we are editing this episode, and the part that deals with the contractual obligation will be on our Facebook pages and the GIS page, so that parents will get a greater understanding of the obligations. We also have, in regards to the loss and damage to the device, what we call an accountability committee that looks at the case and makes a ruling on the case in regards to if the device should be replaced without any charge to the parent, what will be the charge in regards to the device, if it's intentional and maliciously done. If it's an accident, then there are procedures in regards to the accident. A device that comes in that needs to be repaired, there is a loaner device that is provided to the child, and there's a time frame for that. So we have all of this embedded in our operational manual, but the aspect that is pertinent to parents has been communicated to parents, and they are aware. And we're looking to further enlighten the general public and parents in regards to that.
Thank you, Pierre Andall. Indeed, it's almost a pleasure being here with you, but time as it is, but it is what it is. Time waits on no man, and certainly we have to end the discussion here. I want to encourage you to continue doing what you were doing, and certainly you always have a home here at the GBN, so you can continue with the business of ensuring the proper education of our nation's children. All the best to you.
Joseph, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure being on GBN. It's always a pleasure being with you. And I just want to remind parents that this Sunday on GIS, say 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., the continuation of the parent series. I'm asking parents to come on. You can also log in to the Zoom, which is on GIS. The links are on GIS, and you can find it there. Thank you so much for having us, and it has been a pleasure.
All the best to you. Kevin Andall, Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Education. Before him, I spoke for the first half of the program, Education Minister, Honorable Emmalin, Pierre. So, folks, all good things must come to an end. This is where we draw the curtains onto this program for today, the 20th day of the month of October. Peace and love. JC loves you. Until tomorrow morning, the good Lord's willing, when we do this all over again, when I join you from 6. So long, everybody. JC loves you. Continue to live life and love life. Treat each day as though it's your last day on planet Earth. And once you realize that you're still here, you give God thanks and you continue living until you fulfill your divine purpose and divine destiny. All the best, reminding you, the COVID-19 protocols. COVID remains an ever-present threat. The wearing of the mask, of course, above by wearing of the mask, sanitization, social distancing protocol, and do what you do. Keep your children safe. God bless everybody. Have a great day.